Hey everyone. Tonight we step into a war that burned cold instead of hot, where victory froze in place and death wore white. A place where rifles cracked in air so dry they shattered, where men's eyelids froze shut before dawn, and where silence killed faster than bullets. This is Finland. Winter of 1939, 40 below zero. Breath turning to glass. And a farmer named Simo Häyhä learning to become invisible. You won't hear of generals or speeches here, only snow packed over shallow graves. Steam rising from bodies that never reached warmth again. And the quiet rhythm of a trigger pulled without hate. They called him the White Death, a ghost that haunted the Red Army for 100 days. 500 lives, and not a single word of glory. If stories of forgotten wars and frozen courage keep you awake at night, hit like and subscribe, and in the comments, tell me, would you survive in a world where even breath could betray you now? Steady yourself and follow me into the snow, where the forest breathes, the silence hunts, and one man learns to disappear completely. You step into a world veiled in an endless expanse of white, a silence so profound it seems to hum in your ears. This is Karelia, Finland, in the early 1900s. Imagine a time before the glow of electric lights, before the hum of distant traffic. Here, the only constant companion is the whisper of the wind weaving through frozen pine forests, and the sharp, almost musical crack of frost as it bites deeper into the earth. The air itself feels ancient, clean, and biting, filling your lungs with a cold that awakens every nerve. In this land of quiet winters, where the sun often feels like a distant memory, you observe a small, silent farm boy. His name is Simo Häyhä. You watch him grow, his frame slender yet resilient, his eyes keen and observant. He is a creature of this land, raised not among the clamor of crowds, but in the profound solitude between the steady rhythm of a rifle and the gentle presence of reindeer. His childhood is a ballet performed on skis, a seamless dance with the rhythm of the forest. He learns its secrets from the rustling of leaves beneath a blanket of snow, the precise weight of a rifle in his hands, the way the light filters through icy branches. Every lesson is absorbed into his being, not through words, but through an intuitive understanding of survival and observation. You see him, a young shadow flitting through the trees, a part of the landscape rather than an intruder. His movements are fluid, almost imperceptible, a quiet mastery of his environment. He learns to identify every sound, every subtle shift in the wind, every track left on the pristine snow. The forest becomes his teacher, its quiet wisdom his guide. He gathers berries in summer, navigates treacherous ice in winter, and always carries the quiet weight of expectation, of necessity, that his land demands. His mother, a woman of few words but deep understanding, once shared a simple truth with him, a truth born of generations spent enduring the profound cold and the immense quiet of this northern world. She looked at him, her gaze as steady as the winter sun, and said, "In this land, silence saves you." And you feel the resonance of those words, the deep, fundamental truth they held for a people who had learned to live in harmony with a landscape that could be both breathtakingly beautiful and unforgivingly harsh. You understand, as Simo did, that silence was not merely an absence of sound. It was a strategy, a refuge, a way of being. As you observe the boy, you see him pause, perhaps in a clearing, his small hands adjusting a rusted sight on a practice rifle. His breath, a faint wisp of vapor in the frigid air, disappears almost instantly. And for a fleeting moment, as he looks out into the endless, silent expanse of white, you catch a glimpse, a faint echo, of the man he will become. The boy, rooted in the stillness of his land, unconsciously begins to embody the ghost that will soon haunt the dreams of a powerful, encroaching army. The White Death. The silence, you realize, is not just around him, but within him, a deep wellspring of power awaiting its moment. You fast forward through the years, carried by the same silent wind that shapes the pines. Simo is no longer a boy, but a young man of 17. His quiet resolve deepened by the passage of time. He makes a choice, a natural progression for a son of this land. He joins the civil guard. This isn't a transition into a world of parades and loud commands. No. This is an immersion into a more profound discipline, an extension of the lessons the forest had already taught him. His training grounds are the same cold, wind-swept plains and the same echoing silence of the Finnish wilderness. You watch him, day after day, year after year, as he hones his art. It is the art of stillness, of becoming one with the environment. He learns to lie motionless for hours, for what feels like an eternity, the bitter cold seeping into his bones, numbing his extremities. But he does not flinch. He breathes in rhythm with the gentle fall of the snow, his body a silent, unmoving sculpture against the white backdrop. His every muscle, every nerve, is trained to resist the urge to fidget, to shift, to betray his presence. You can almost feel the frigid air on your skin, the sting of ice against your exposed face. Yet you observe his unwavering focus, his incredible self-control, his natural talent, nurtured by a lifetime of hunting, blossoms. He enters countless shooting competitions, and his wooden farmhouse, a humble dwelling in the vastness, begins to fill with an array of trophies, cups, plaques, ribbons, each a testament to his unparalleled marksmanship. Yet, in this house adorned with symbols of victory, you never hear the sound of boisterous laughter or triumphant cheers from Simo. He receives his accolades with the same calm, quiet demeanor with which he pulls a trigger. The recognition is simply an acknowledgement of his practiced skill, not a source of ego. You see him practicing, not just his aim, but his patience. He waits. He listens. He closes his eyes sometimes, not to rest, but to heighten his other senses, to feel the world around him. Before he pulls the trigger, you imagine him listening to the steady, rhythmic thump-thump of his own heartbeat, grounding himself in that singular moment of intense focus. It is a meditation, a communion between man, weapon, and target. The shot is not an act of aggression, but a precise, almost inevitable conclusion to a long, careful deliberation. And then you hear the whispers of a concept that defines this land and its people. Sisu. You don't need a dictionary definition to understand it. You see it in Simo's eyes, in the unwavering set of his jaw, in his capacity to endure. It is a stoic endurance that pushes beyond the boundaries of pain, beyond the grip of fear, beyond what any reasonable person might consider possible. It is a grit, a resolve, a silent courage that allows one to face overwhelming odds with quiet determination. Sisu is not about winning or losing. It is about acting despite the impossibility of success. about holding firm when all hope seems lost. You realize, as you observe him, that the true seed of what will become the White Death isn't merely his extraordinary marksmanship, though that is undeniable. No, it is something far deeper, far more primal. It is his absolute mastery of stillness itself. It is his profound understanding that in this vast, unforgiving winter landscape, to become invisible, to become silent, is to become deadly. You feel the weight of that understanding settling in the air, a quiet premonition of the storm to come. The peaceful rhythm of these quiet years abruptly shatters. The year is 1939, and a storm, not of snow but of steel and fire, begins to gather on the eastern horizon. You feel the palpable shift in the air, a cold dread that descends not just from the winter sky, but from the immense shadow cast by a colossal neighbor. The Soviet Union, vast and powerful, invades Finland. It is the beginning of what history will call the Winter War, though in this moment, it feels like the end of everything familiar. You witness the impossible odds that confront this small, resolute nation. Against a staggering force of approximately 450,000 Soviet troops, Finland can muster only about 32,000 men. Imagine this, a wave of humanity, armed and immense, ready to crash over a candlelight nation, threatening to extinguish its very existence. You feel the crushing weight of that disparity, the sheer enormity of the challenge. It is David against Goliath. But Goliath comes with tanks and planes, and David has only his frozen resolve and a deep love for his land. You see the Russian soldiers, hundreds of thousands of them, marching across the pristine, unbroken white snow. Their coats, a stark military green, stand out like jarring stains against the blinding expanse. Their breath, in the brutal cold that plunges far below freezing, turns instantly to thick, opaque fog, swirling around them, a visible testament to the freezing air they exhale. They are an unstoppable tide, a seemingly endless line of men, each step crunching ominously in the deep snow. You hear the distant rumble of their vehicles, the murmur of their voices, a cacophony that breaks the sacred silence of the Finnish wilderness. Simo Häyhä, now 24 years old, is among the first to answer the call. You watch him as he leaves his family farm, the same quiet dwelling where he had collected his shooting trophies. There is no fanfare, no dramatic farewell. He simply shoulders his old M2830 rifle, a familiar extension of his arm, its wooden stock worn smooth by years of use. This isn't a new, advanced weapon. It's a tool, a trusted companion, like the sleds and skis he's used since childhood. You notice the way he handles it, with a calm respect, a quiet confidence. As he turns to leave, you can almost hear the unsaid goodbyes, the silent understanding between him and his family. He offers no grand speech, no declaration of heroism. His words are as sparse and precise as his actions. It's time to work. You feel the profound simplicity of that statement, devoid of emotion, yet heavy with unspoken duty. It encapsulates the sisu of his people, the quiet, unyielding determination to do what must be done, without complaint, without question, even in the face of certain despair. And then, you are pulled along, transported into the heart of the frozen battlefield. The landscape transforms around you, endless snow, the air thick with silence, a silence that has now become ominous, expectant. The cold bites deeper, not just physically, but emotionally. Here, amidst the stark beauty and brutal reality, you witness the birth of a ghost, not a spectral apparition, but a man who will become legend, a silent hunter who will embody the very spirit of this frozen land. The world has changed, and Simo, the quiet farmer, is about to become something else entirely, a force as elemental and deadly as the winter itself. You find yourself beside Simo, immersed in the meticulous preparations that transform a man into an unseen predator. The freezing air stings your nostrils, and you watch as he crawls, slowly, deliberately, through the deep snow. Every movement is practiced, purposeful, leaving barely a ripple in the pristine white blanket. You feel the biting cold against your hands, even through thick gloves, as he carefully pushes the powdery snow aside, then pulls it back, erasing his own tracks. Then, you notice a peculiar ritual. He fills his mouth with snow, a handful of pristine flakes, letting them melt slowly on his tongue. You realize why it's not to quench a thirst, but to prevent the telltale plume of warm breath from rising into the frigid air, a beacon that would betray his position to a vigilant enemy. He becomes a part of the snow itself, his breath, his essence, masked by its cold embrace. You taste the faint, clean coolness of the snow in your own mouth, and you understand the depth of his commitment to invisibility. He then begins to construct his hide, not a complex bunker, but an intricate, organic extension of the landscape. He carefully packs snow in front of his rifle, building a low, almost invisible mound. Then, with a slow, precise motion, he pours a small amount of water from a canteen over this packed snow, allowing it to freeze solid. You hear the faint, crackling sound as the water turns to ice, binding the snow into an impenetrable barrier. This simple, brilliant technique has a dual purpose. It hides the muzzle flash from his rifle, ensuring no telltale puff of smoke gives away his location, and it provides a stable, unmoving rest for his weapon, enhancing his already legendary accuracy. You observe his choice of weapon, his trusted M2830 rifle. It's an old military model, robust and reliable. But what truly stands out is what's missing. He refuses a telescopic scope. You might wonder why. In a war defined by precision, a sniper would forgo such a crucial tool. He tells you, in the calm silence of his actions, that scopes shine, fog, and make you taller. You imagine the glint of sunlight off a lens, the delicate glass fogging up in the extreme cold. The extra inches added to his profile, making him a more visible target. For Simo, every fraction of an inch, every subtle reflection, could mean the difference between life and death. His iron sights, though seemingly less advanced, offer a direct, unobstructed view, unburdened by the frailties of technology in this brutal environment. He zeroes his sights, not at an arbitrary number, but at a precise 150 meters a distance he later describes, with quiet gravitas, as the distance of the soul. You feel the weight of that phrase, understanding that for Simo, this distance is where he feels most connected to his prey, where his skill and the rifle's precision align perfectly. Every movement he makes becomes a ritual, the slow, deliberate loading of a round into the chamber, the gentle settling of the rifle butt against his shoulder, the calm, controlled breathing, and finally, the almost imperceptible squeeze of the trigger. It is a dance of absolute control, a ballet of death performed in profound silence. He didn't hunt men, you realize, watching his focused gaze scan the horizon. He hunted movement. You see him ignore static figures, waiting instead for the subtle shift, the telltale gesture, the slight tremor that indicates a living, moving target. In this white expanse, where everything is frozen and still, any movement becomes a declaration, a challenge, an invitation. And Simo, the master of stillness, is ready to answer. You are transported to the heart of the storm, to the Kola front, a place where the disparity between the forces is stark, almost unimaginable. Here, you witness the grim reality a mere 32. Finnish defenders stand against an onslaught of approximately 4,000 Soviet troops. The odds are not just stacked, they are an Everest of insurmountable resistance. You feel the chilling bravery, the almost reckless courage of these few men facing such an overwhelming wave. And within this tiny, defiant pocket, Simo Häyhä takes his position. You watch him as he settles into his carefully crafted snow blind, a ghost among ghosts. From the first faint blush of dawn to the deep, encroaching shadows of dusk, he lies still, utterly motionless. The world around him is a symphony of subtle sounds, the whistle of the wind, the creak of freezing branches, the distant rumble of enemy movements. His eyes, keen and unblinking, scan the white expanse, searching, waiting. He chooses his targets with a calm, almost detached precision, not driven by emotion, but by the cold logic of a hunter. He doesn't waste a single shot. You see him target the runners, the men who ferry messages across the deadly no man's land, severing the lines of communication. He picks off the signalmen, the eyes and ears of the enemy, blinding them. And with particular focus, he eliminates the officers, the leaders whose presence gives structure and command to the mass of soldiers. For Simo, there is no distinction of rank, no hierarchy of targets. Each Russian uniform represents a threat, a part of the invading force that must be neutralized. His aim is unwavering, his resolve absolute. You begin to recognize his rhythm, a silent, deadly cadence that echoes across the frozen landscape. He fires a single shot, a sharp crack that seems to be swallowed almost instantly by the vastness of the snow. Then, you count with him. 30 seconds of utter silence. A pause that feels like an eternity. He shifts his position imperceptibly, reloading, observing, waiting. And then, another shot. This measured interval isn't just about stealth. It's about control, about allowing the initial chaos to settle, to observe the enemy's reaction, to prepare for the next precise strike. This subtle, rhythmic repetition becomes a terrifying signature, a whisper of death that haunts the enemy lines. You are there on December 21st, 1939, a day that will be etched into the grim tapestry of the Winter War. On this single day, Simo Häyhä achieves an almost mythical feat. 25 confirmed kills. You can almost feel the ground tremble beneath you, the distant concussions of a battle raging, men falling silently in the snow. Then, as if a switch has been flipped, a profound silence descends once more, broken only by the mournful wind. The white landscape is now stained with patches of red, a stark, brutal contrast against the purity of the snow. The air remains breathless cold, holding the echoes of the shots, the unspoken cries, the quiet despair of those who witness the ghost in the white. The snow continues to fall, gently, indiscriminately, covering the raw wounds of the earth. It is a silent shroud, packing itself over the shallow graves, blurring the lines between life and death. And you realize that in this frozen world, Simo Häyhä isn't just fighting a war. He is waging a battle against movement itself. A silent reaper whose presence is marked only by its absence, and by the stillness that follows each precise, deadly strike. The legend of the White Death begins to spread like a chill wind through the Soviet ranks, a terrifying whisper on the frozen battlefield. You are drawn into a scene that epitomizes the raw, personal brutality of this winter war, a sniper duel. Two men, reduced to mere specks in an endless ocean of snow. They lie approximately 400 meters apart, almost a quarter of a mile, each hidden, each a hunter and the hunted, their lives hanging on a single, perfect shot. You watch Simo, utterly still, a master of concealment. He has been in position since before dawn, patiently waiting. The hours stretch, slow and deliberate, marked only by the shifting light and the deepening cold. The sun begins its low arc across the winter sky, a pale, indifferent orb, casting long, ethereal shadows that stretch and twist across the snow-covered terrain. You feel the pervasive cold seep into your very bones, the muscles in your limbs aching from the prolonged stillness. Yet Simo remains a statue, his resolve unyielding. He waits, not just for a shot, but for the opportune moment, for the elements to align in his favor. And then, as the sun begins its slow descent, dipping behind him, creating a brief, intense window of backlighting for anyone facing his direction, he sees it. A faint, almost imperceptible glint, a tiny, fleeting flash of light, reflecting from a distant object. You hold your breath, your heart thumping a slow, heavy rhythm in your chest, knowing what that glint signifies. It is the signature of a telescopic scope, a tiny beacon betraying the position of the enemy sniper. The Russian, perhaps, had grown impatient, or simply underestimated the keenness of Simo's senses. One shot. The sharp crack of the rifle pierces the profound silence. A single, definitive sound that echoes across the white expanse. You see, or rather, you feel the impact. In the distance, a body falls, a stark silhouette against the snow, its brief life extinguished in an instant. The faint glint vanishes. The other man, Simo, remains unseen, unheard, an extension of the frozen earth itself. The duel is over. It is this harrowing encounter, among many others, that solidifies Simo's fearsome reputation. The Soviets, unable to comprehend or counter this silent, invisible force, bestow upon him a chilling moniker. Belaya Smrt, the White Death. You hear the words whispered among the frozen troops, a mixture of fear, respect, and utter bewilderment. They send out specialized counter-snipers, red death squads, even artillery barrages, desperately trying to locate and eliminate this one man who is wreaking such devastating havoc on their lines. But Simo, the ghost, always seems to vanish, leaving only a trail of silent, cold casualties. Yet, to Simo, the legendary status, the terror he inspires, the name he has earned, holds no special significance. You hear his simple, understated reflection on such encounters, a testament to his unflappable nature. For him, it was merely another day's work in the snow. You feel the profound humility in that statement, the absence of ego, the pure focus on the task at hand. He is not a hero seeking glory. He is a farmer defending his land, a hunter performing his duty in the only way he knows how. The silence returns, heavier now, pregnant with the unspoken dread of an enemy who faces a foe they cannot see, cannot track, and cannot defeat. As the initial, desperate days of the Winter War settle into a brutal, frozen stalemate, the fighting shifts, the front lines stabilize, but the relentless chill of the war continues to permeate every corner of the vast, snow-covered landscape. It is in this new phase that you witness another facet of Simo's terrifying versatility. No longer just a solitary sniper, a stationary phantom in a snowblind, he becomes a dynamic force, a ghost on skis. You see him leading a small, elite squad, men as adept and silent as he is, traversing the deep forests with effortless grace. They are a guerrilla unit, moving with an almost otherworldly speed and stealth across the treacherous terrain. Imagine the scene: deep night, the only light the shimmering glow of the moon, reflecting off vast, frozen lakes. Your breath clouds mix with the drifting snow, momentarily obscuring your vision, then vanishing into the frigid air. The silence is profound, broken only by the soft whisper of skis gliding over fresh powder, a rhythmic, almost hypnotic sound that blends with the forest's natural quiet. They strike with devastating precision. You are there as they raid Soviet camps, deep within enemy territory. They appear out of the darkness, a sudden, swift assault, a flurry of precise action. And then, before dawn can even begin to paint the eastern sky, they vanish. They melt back into the forest, leaving behind only the chilling evidence of their presence: silent casualties, disrupted supply lines, and a pervasive, gnawing fear that spreads through the Soviet ranks. The fires of the enemy camps reflect off the icy surfaces of the lakes, creating a momentary, flickering tableau of chaos, before the darkness and the silence reclaim their dominion. Simo's philosophy, uttered with the same quiet conviction he applies to every action, is chillingly clear. You hear his simple, unyielding words. If they wore a Russian uniform, they were dead. It is a statement devoid of personal malice, but brimming with the cold, hard logic of survival and defense. For him, the uniform signified the enemy, the aggressor, and his duty was to protect his homeland. There was no room for hesitation, no space for doubt. His comrades, those who fight beside him and witness his extraordinary feats, begin to call him by a different name, one that speaks of awe and respect: the magic shooter. You feel the admiration in their voices, the sense of wonder at his impossible aim and his uncanny ability to appear and disappear like smoke. But to the enemy, the name remains terrifyingly consistent. Whispered with a superstitious dread, the White Death. You realize that these two names, born of different perspectives, ultimately point to the same truth: precision colder than mercy. Simo Häyhä is a force of nature, an embodiment of the harsh, beautiful land he defends. He is the quiet rhythm of a trigger pulled without hate, the swift, decisive movement of a ghost on skis, and the chilling silence that follows in his wake. In this frozen conflict, where every breath is a struggle and every step a risk, he becomes a legend. A stark reminder that even in the face of overwhelming power, one man, rooted in his land and his silence, can turn the tide of terror. The war, a relentless winter beast, has raged for over 3 months, its icy grip tightening on the land and the men. You are in the deep forest of WWII. In March of 1940, Simo, ever at the forefront, is leading an assault against advancing Soviet forces, pressing back against the encroaching tide. The air crackles not just with cold, but with the tension of desperate combat, the frantic exchange of fire, the shouts and the cries. And then, in a moment that shatters the rhythm of battle, you feel it. A sudden, blinding flash. A deafening roar. Not just around you, but within you. Simo later describes it, with a chilling simplicity, as a bang inside my mouth. You imagine the searing pain, the disorienting shock, the sickening impact that rips through his jaw. It is an explosive bullet, a cruel irony for a man who has brought so much silent death, now silenced himself by a single, devastating shot. You see him fall, a sudden, limp weight, his body collapsing into the snow. The chaos of battle swirls around him, indifferent to his fate. He is buried, almost immediately, among the fallen, lost amidst the grim tally of casualties. The fighting continues, a desperate, brutal ballet of life and death. And for a time, Simo is simply another victim, consumed by the voracious appetite of war. But then, a flicker of hope, a whisper of life in the midst of death. You watch as a Finnish soldier, moving through the gruesome aftermath, performing the grim task of identifying the fallen, notices something. A subtle, almost imperceptible twitch of a leg, buried beneath the snow and the bodies. It is Simo's leg. He is barely breathing, his face grotesquely mangled. But he is alive. You feel a surge of primal relief, a quiet acknowledgement of the tenacity of life. He is pulled from the pile, his body a broken mess, but his spirit, though bruised, remains unbowed. The journey to safety, to medical aid, is a blurred memory of agonizing pain and fading consciousness. For 7 days, Simo hovers on the brink, a silent struggle for survival waged within his broken body. Each breath is a monumental effort, each beat of his heart a testament to his indomitable will, his sisu. And then, with a profound sense of cosmic timing, he wakes up. His eyes flicker open, perhaps to the sterile white of a hospital tent, a stark contrast to the white of the battlefield. The date is March 13th, 1940. You feel the weight of this day, the immense significance of it. For on this very day, as Simo Häyhä draws a conscious breath, the winter war officially ends. A fragile peace descends upon the ravaged land, a silence that is no longer ominous, but weary. His words, when recounted later, carry the same stark, simple truth that defines his character. The war ended. I woke up. You feel the raw poetry in that statement, the profound connection between his personal ordeal and the fate of his nation. He had faced death and, in a parallel act of rebirth, so too had Finland. The silence, so long his weapon and his shield, had now become a witness to his survival and to the quiet, exhausted end of a brutal conflict. The war has ended. But for Simo, the battle for his own body and spirit is just beginning. You follow his arduous journey of recovery, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. His face, shattered by the explosive bullet, requires no less than 26 surgeries. Imagine the pain, the slow, meticulous process of reconstructing bone and flesh, using fragments of his own hip to rebuild his jaw. You witness the quiet determination in his eyes, the same unwavering resolve that made him an invisible hunter, now focused on healing. Each surgery is a step, a painful, deliberate step, back towards wholeness. As he mends, the accolades that he never sought begin to find him. His bravery, his unparalleled effectiveness on the battlefield, are recognized in a way that is almost unheard of in military history. He is promoted from corporal directly to second lieutenant, one of the highest jumps in rank ever recorded in the Finnish army. You feel the weight of this honor, understanding that it's not just for his kills, but for the profound impact he had on the morale of his countrymen and the terror he inflicted upon the enemy. It is a promotion that speaks volumes about his quiet courage and his extraordinary contribution to the war effort. Life, for Simo, slowly begins to find a new rhythm, a return to the quietude he cherished. In 1961, years after the war, he receives a new farm, a gift from a grateful nation. You see him there, in the familiar embrace of the Finnish countryside, his hands once again tending to the earth, to animals. He raises dogs, these loyal companions sharing his quiet life, their presence a gentle comfort. He returns to the forests, not as a sniper, but as a hunter, moving with the same silent grace he always possessed. He participates in hunting competitions, and with his innate skill and patience, he wins the Ruokolahti Hunting Cup an astonishing 5 years in a row. It is a subtle triumph, a quiet reaffirmation of his connection to the natural world. When asked about the war, about the extraordinary circumstances that forged his legend, Simo Häyhä remains consistent in his understated humility. You hear his words, delivered with the calm wisdom of a man who has seen the depths of human conflict and emerged, not broken, but profoundly grounded. I did my job. It is a simple, unambiguous statement, devoid of self-pity or boastfulness, a reflection of the sisu that defined his people. And then, another profound insight, spoken with the quiet conviction of one who has found peace. I've never dreamed of war. I always sleep well. You feel the weight of those words, a testament to a soul unburdened by the horrors he witnessed and inflicted. His conscience is clear, his actions justified by the defense of his homeland. You picture him in his later years, an old man, snow gently falling around his quiet farm, the warm glow of firelight illuminating his weathered face. You see him breathing, slowly, deeply, in rhythm with the forest once more. His life a gentle arc from the silent farm boy to the silent soldier, and back again. His peace is profound, earned through hardship, nurtured by the land he loved. As Simo Häyhä lives out his long, quiet life, his legend, untamed by his humility, continues to echo through the annals of history. You encounter the numbers, the cold, stark figures that attempt to quantify his impact, yet struggle to fully capture the essence of his presence. There are conflicting counts: 259 official sniper kills, a number verified through rigorous military records. But then, there are the public estimates, whispers that swell into a staggering 505 to 542 kills, and nearly 800 if you include those he achieved with a submachine gun in close quarters. You feel the immensity of these numbers, a chilling testament to his deadly efficiency, a shadow stretching across the frozen battlefields. Yet, when you look into his personal notes, the private reflections of the man himself, you find a response that cuts through the statistics with the quiet force of truth. He wrote simply, "Too many." You feel the profound weight of those two words, a subtle acknowledgement of the human cost, a quiet grief for the lives taken, even in the name of defense. He never glorified his actions, never saw himself as a hero in the traditional sense. He was just a man who did what was needed, a farmer forced to become a warrior, protecting his home, his own words, spoken with the same unwavering honesty that defined his life. Cement this perspective. I did what I was told, as well as I could. You sense the simple, unadorned truth in that statement. A complete absence of ego. It reflects the quiet dignity of a man who understood duty, who bore the weight of terrible necessity, and who found peace in having performed his task with meticulous dedication. And so, the quiet journey of Simo Häyhä, the White Death, comes to its natural conclusion. In 2002, on a quiet winter day, mirroring the very environment that shaped him, he passes away at the remarkable age of 96. You imagine the gentle fall of snow that day, blanketing the Finnish landscape, as if the land itself mourned the passing of one of its most devoted sons. You see a final, poignant image: snow drifting gently outside a window, and within a wooden house, an old rifle resting quietly on a wall, a silent relic of a brutal war. It is not displayed as a trophy, but as a memory, a testament to a life lived with purpose and profound connection to the land. You feel the profound stillness of the moment, the sense of an era drawing to a close, and then a final whisper, carried on the soft breath of the winter wind, echoing through the empty spaces of the forest. He became what the forest taught him to be: silence itself. Commanding. You are left with the lingering sense of a man who embodied his environment, who understood that in the deepest quiet there lay an unparalleled strength. His story is a testament to the enduring power of nature's lessons, and the profound, almost mystical connection between a man and the land he calls home. The silence remains, eternal and deep, just as Simo Häyhä intended. You are there, standing on the precipice of an immense silence. It begins, as all profound moments often do, not with a bang of sentence, but with an almost sacred hush. The air itself seems to thicken, to absorb every distant murmur, leaving only the soft, steady rhythm of your own breath echoing within the hollow of your chest. Imagine, if you will, the sharp metallic glint of a scope, catching the barest hint of light, a silent promise held against the vast, indifferent canvas of the world. In this singular moment, poised between existence and oblivion, you understand that one pull of a trigger, one fleeting decision, possesses the power to ripple outwards, irrevocably altering not just a solitary life, but sometimes the very trajectory of an entire war. Your journey tonight will take you across unimaginable distances, through landscapes as diverse and contrasting as the human spirit itself. Picture, first, the ethereal, snow-draped forests of Finland, where every frosted branch holds its breath, where the biting cold bites at your exposed skin, and the air itself crackles with an unseen tension. Then, let your mind drift to the humid, steaming jungles of Vietnam, where the air is thick with the scent of damp earth and exotic blossoms, where every shadow seems to conceal a secret, and the oppressive heat clings to you like a second skin. In these disparate realms, amidst the chaos and the quiet, unseen figures moved like phantoms. They were ghosts, watching, observing, their gazes sharpened by an intense focus, their worlds framed through the stark, unforgiving precision of iron sights. There were no grand parades for these individuals, no triumphant drums to mark their quiet, solitary victories. Their existence was defined by a different kind of ceremony. The bitter frost that numbed their fingers, the clinging mud that weighed down their boots, the incessant, soul-searing patience of waiting. This waiting was not merely a physical act. It was a profound, spiritual discipline, a state of being that demanded an absolute mastery over the self. For these were not, in the conventional sense, simply killers. That word, with its harsh edges, fails to capture the intricate tapestry of their reality. Instead, you realize they were survivors, molded by circumstances, hardened by necessity. They were individuals who, to endure, learned a fundamental and deeply unsettling truth. They had to stop moving, yes, but even more critically, they had to learn to stop feeling, to push emotion, fear, empathy, and even hope into the furthest recesses of their minds, leaving only a cold, sharp clarity. Tonight, you will follow the silent footsteps of 4 such souls, 4 individuals who, against all odds, mastered the almost impossible art of stillness. They discovered within themselves a reservoir of patience that stretched the ordinary bounds of human endurance, transforming their bodies into instruments of precision, their minds into sanctuaries of unwavering focus. And for this extraordinary mastery, this profound communion with silence, they paid a price that echoed deep within their very being, a cost that was measured not in coins or accolades, but in the enduring weight of that same silence, a silence that never truly departed, even long after the battles had faded into memory. It is into their stories, into their quiet, isolated worlds, that you now gently step. Imagine, if you will, the vast, snow-covered landscape of Finland, stretching endlessly beneath a sky of muted grays and whites. It is here, in this unforgiving, yet beautiful northern wilderness, that our first story begins to unfold. Picture the year 1905, a time when the world was poised on the cusp of immense change. But here, life moved to the ancient rhythms of the land. This is where Simo Häyhä first drew breath. Not into the clamor of a city, but into the crisp, clean air of a farmer's life. You can almost feel the biting chill on your cheeks, smell the scent of pine and frost, hear the crunch of snow underfoot as a young Simo grew up, intimately connected to this frozen expanse. His youth was spent not in classrooms or factories, but in the art of hunting, stalking prey through silent woods, learning to become one with the environment. He understood the language of the forest, the subtle shifts in wind, the tracks left by creatures, the profound wisdom of patience. Then, the quiet solitude of his world was brutally shattered. The year was 1939, and the vast, formidable Soviet Union cast its shadow over Finland, launching an invasion that would come to be known as the Winter War. Suddenly, the skills Simo had honed in the peaceful pursuit of sustenance were called upon for a far grimmer purpose. You can almost sense the shift in the atmosphere, the pervasive fear, the urgent call to defend one's homeland. Simo Häyhä, the quiet farmer, transformed. He didn't don a grand uniform or march with a loud, clanking battalion. Instead, he simply melted into the landscape, becoming a ghost cloaked in white, an almost mythical figure born of the snow itself. What makes his story truly remarkable? What draws you into his world of stark, unadorned efficiency is his deliberate choice of weaponry. In an era where advanced optics were becoming commonplace, Simo famously preferred his iron sights. No magnified scope, no technological crutch to betray his position with a glint of sunlight. Just the pure, unadulterated skill of his own eyes, his unwavering focus, and the steady, practiced rhythm of his lungs. You can imagine him, hidden beneath a carefully sculpted mound of snow, breathing shallowly, his breath freezing in tiny, almost invisible puffs, a living, breathing part of the winter wonderland. In an astonishing span of just 98 days, a mere fraction of a year, Simo Häyhä achieved a feat that would forever etch his name into the annals of military history. He was credited with 542 confirmed kills. Consider the sheer discipline required for such an accomplishment. You might envision him, for hours on end, pressed against the frozen earth, the biting cold seeping into his bones, yet his resolve remaining unyielding. He froze his breath, a practiced technique to prevent the telltale vapor from rising and giving away his position. He would harden the snow around his rifle, molding it into a firm, unyielding rest, ensuring absolute stability for each critical shot. And he would wait. Hours would pass, a silent vigil in the frozen wilderness, without making a single sound, without a single unnecessary movement. His patience was an almost supernatural force. Until, as often happens in the brutal theater of war, fate intervened with a violent, explosive crescendo. One day, a high explosive bullet, tearing through the frozen air, found its mark, shattering a portion of his face. The impact must have been unimaginable, a searing pain in the midst of the cold. Yet, even as his world erupted in fire and agony, even as his physical form was grievously wounded, his indomitable will, that quiet, steady resolve that had defined him, remained unbroken. He would endure, a testament to the quiet strength forged in the unforgiving embrace of the Finnish winter. You remain immersed in the chilling expanse of the Finnish winter, where every breath you take hangs as a delicate, visible plume in the frigid air. Imagine the stark contrast: the advancing Soviet soldiers, clad in their dark, drab brown coats, moving across a landscape draped in an immaculate, unbroken blanket of white snow. To Simo, and to you, observing through his eyes, they became stark, almost undeniable targets against this pristine, silent backdrop. The forest itself, a labyrinth of frozen pines and snow-laden birches, transformed into a theater of deadly quiet, where the slightest misstep or an errant crunch of snow could spell doom. Simo, a true master of camouflage, melted into this frost-kissed world. He didn't just hide, he became the environment. You might envision him, not as a man wielding a rifle, but as an extension of the snowdrift, a shadow cast by the very trees, his form blurred and indistinguishable from the winter's stark beauty. His rifle, a simple, sturdy instrument, seemed to fuse with his very soul, becoming an extension of his unwavering will, an almost organic part of the snow-covered landscape. Each shot fired was not a mere explosion. It was a heartbeat, a singular pulse in the vast silence, followed by the soft, almost imperceptible whisper of a life extinguished in the cold. You can almost hear the faint thump as a man falls, absorbed quickly by the cushioning snow, leaving only a brief, crimson stain that quickly fades against the overwhelming white. Survival in this brutal, isolated realm demanded an incredible tenacity. You might imagine Simo, driven by pure instinct, by an ancient, primal understanding of the hunt, surviving on the scantest resources. He would melt snow for water, quenching a thirst that gnawed at him, while his patience became his most potent weapon, an endless well from which he drew strength. Days bled into nights, and nights into days, marked only by the shifting light and the relentless cold. When consciousness eventually returned to Simo Häyhä, after the devastating wound that had threatened to claim him, he awoke to a world that had subtly, irrevocably shifted. You can almost feel the groggy disorientation, the slow, painful realization as the hospital walls replaced the endless forest. The war, that brutal, silent struggle he had fought with such unwavering dedication, had concluded. And though Finland had held its ground with incredible resilience, it had ultimately lost significant portions of its beloved land to the encroaching Soviet might. A quiet, somber victory, perhaps. He eventually returned to his farm, to the familiar embrace of the earth and the quiet rhythms of agricultural life. Yet, for Simo, nothing was ever truly the same. His legend, born in the crucible of frost and fire, was now irrevocably sealed. The relentless snows of winter would melt each spring, yielding to the verdant greens of the Finnish summer. But the name White Death, a moniker whispered with both fear and awe, remained, an enduring echo of his time as a phantom in the snow. You realize that even in the quietest lives, some experiences leave an indelible mark, a legacy that transcends time and season, forever woven into the fabric of history. Now, allow your mind to drift away from the frozen north, towards a different landscape, a different struggle. Shift your focus to the vast, embattled lands of the Soviet Union. As the ominous shadow of German invasion stretched across the European continent. It is here, in the midst of unparalleled global conflict, that you encounter a remarkable woman whose story defies convention and shatters expectations. Her name is Lyudmila Pavlichenko, and her journey from an ordinary life to an extraordinary destiny is one you will find both compelling and quietly awe-inspiring. Before the war engulfed her nation, Lyudmila was a factory worker, a diligent individual contributing to the industrial pulse of her country. In her spare time, she nurtured a passion for history, delving into the stories of the past, perhaps never imagining she would one day become a pivotal part of history herself. But when the German war machine advanced with terrifying speed and brutality, Lyudmila, like countless others, felt an urgent, unyielding call to defend her homeland. She volunteered, a young woman stepping forward into a man's war, driven by a profound sense of duty and defiance. Imagine the scene: a new recruit, likely underestimated by many. Her first weapon, surprisingly, was not a rifle, but a single hand grenade, a testament to the desperation and improvisation of those early days. But her true calling, her innate talent, quickly revealed itself. You can almost feel the tension in the air as she took aim with her first rifle, her gaze steady, her breath controlled. Her very first recorded kills were 2 Nazi officers, felled from an astonishing distance of over 1,300 feet, 400 meters away. An almost impossible feat for a novice, a clear indication of the innate, quiet genius she possessed. From that moment, Lyudmila's path was set. You might picture her moving through the shattered, war-torn cities of Odessa and Sevastopol. Places that once bustled with life, now reduced to rubble and ruin. She became a hunter in these desolate landscapes, stalking her prey amidst the debris, the silence of her rifle punctuating the screams of battle. Her reputation grew with each confirmed kill, each silent, precise shot. She was credited with an incredible 309 confirmed kills, a number that stands as one of the highest ever recorded for a female sniper. And within that impressive tally, you discover another layer of her exceptional skill. 36 of those kills were enemy snipers, a testament to her ability to outwit and outmaneuver even the most skilled opposing marksman in a deadly game of cat and mouse. They called her Lady Death. You can almost hear the name whispered through the trenches, carried on the wind, a name that carried both a chilling fear amongst her enemies and a profound, reverent respect among her comrades. This moniker, Lady Death, was not merely a title. It was an acknowledgement of her lethal precision, her unwavering resolve, and her quiet, unyielding power. In a world where millions were silenced by the deafening roar of war, her rifle spoke, a calm, steady voice of defiance, representing the countless voices that could no longer be heard. A symbol of resistance against an overwhelming tide of aggression. You continue to follow Lyudmila's journey, recognizing that even amidst the unrelenting brutality of war, the deeply human threads of connection and emotion persist. In the grim, unforgiving labyrinth of the trenches, where life was fragile and fleeting, she found a glimmer of light, a profound connection that transcended the constant threat of death. She fell in love. Imagine the quiet moments shared, stolen glances, the warmth of a hand, a whispered word of hope amidst the ceaseless thunder of artillery. These small, precious instances of intimacy, you realize, were not weaknesses, but powerful anchors in a world constantly threatening to pull one under. Yet, even these tender bonds were not immune to the war's insatiable hunger. Her love, the man who had brought a fleeting joy into her existence, was cruelly snatched away by the arbitrary violence of a mortar shell, leaving behind a wound far deeper than any physical injury. Soon after, Lyudmila herself was struck. Shrapnel, a brutal spray of jagged metal, tore into her face, a searing, immediate end to her days on the front lines. You can almost feel the sudden impact, the immediate pain, the abrupt shift from active combatant to wounded survivor. This injury, while ending her direct engagement in the ferocious battles, set her on an entirely different, unexpected path, one that would lead her far beyond the trenches of the Soviet Union. She was sent to America, dispatched as a symbol of Soviet courage and a powerful voice against fascism. You might picture her arriving on unfamiliar shores, a decorated war hero, yet confronted by a society that struggled to comprehend her reality. Instead of being met with questions about her scars, her unparalleled courage, or the horrors she had witnessed, she was often asked about trivialities, about the fashion of skirts, about the superficial aspects of womanhood in a peacetime society. You can almost feel her quiet frustration, the profound disconnect between her lived experience and the polite, almost naive curiosity of those who had not known the battlefield. her response, delivered with a quiet, unwavering dignity, cut through the superficiality like one of her own precise shots. "I killed 309 fascists," she declared, her voice carrying the weight of her experiences, the immense burden of her actions. Then, she posed a question that lingered in the air, a challenge to their comfortable ignorance. "Have you slept better since?" It was a profound statement, an invitation for them to confront the true cost of their peace, to acknowledge the sacrifices made by individuals like her. It was a moment where the quiet strength of her truth spoke volumes, a stark reminder of the realities she had faced. After her impactful tour, Lyudmila returned home, not to the front lines, but to a different kind of service. She became a history teacher, dedicating herself to quietly, patiently imparting the lessons of the past. You might envision her in a classroom, her voice calm, her eyes holding untold depths, presenting history as if it were simply another lesson, another series of events to be understood. Yet, you understand, deeply, that for Lyudmila, history was not merely a subject to be taught. It was a lived experience, an indelible part of her being. And like her, history, with its deep and lasting wounds, never truly healed. The echoes of the past, the memories of love and loss, of combat and courage, remained, a quiet suwasayumai persistent presence in her soul. Now, let your thoughts wander further back in time, to an earlier conflict that scarred a generation, to the vast, muddy battlefields of the First World War. Here, you encounter another remarkable soul, a man whose story bridges ancient traditions and modern warfare. Before he was a soldier, before the mud and barbed wire of the Western Front became his grim reality, Francis Pegamagaba was a hunter. He was an Ojibwe man, born of the First Nations people of Canada, steeped in the profound wisdom and intimate knowledge of the forests. You can almost hear the rustle of leaves beneath his moccasins, feel the hushed reverence he held for the natural world, the way he spoke to the trees, not just with words, but with a deep understanding born of generations. He knew the land, its creatures, its secrets, in a way that few others could comprehend. Then, in the year 1914, the distant drums of war began to beat, reaching even into his quiet, traditional world. A war was raging across the ocean, a conflict that was not inherently his. Yet he answered the call, crossing the vast Atlantic to fight for a cause that extended far beyond his native lands. Imagine the immense cultural shock, the stark contrast between the pristine forests of his home and the industrialized horror he was about to face. The Western Front was a landscape of unimaginable torment poison gas that choked the very air. Deep, clinging mud that swallowed men whole, and an omnipresent death that lurked in every shadow, every shell crater. Yet, amidst this chaos, Francis Pegamagabo moved with an almost supernatural calm and purpose. You might picture him, a lone figure amidst the explosions, running vital messages through the deadly inferno, his resolve unwavering, his steps never hesitating. Even as destruction rained down around him, his innate connection to the land, his hunter's instincts, allowed him to navigate the treacherous landscape of no man's land with an uncanny precision. He was known for his incredible daring, crawling through the perilous expanse between enemy lines, not just to observe, but to scavenge desperately needed ammunition for his brothers in arms, risking his life for the collective survival of his unit. His skills as a marksman, honed in the peaceful forests, now found their terrifying efficacy in the trenches. He was credited with an astonishing 378 confirmed kills, a number that speaks to his relentless dedication and pinpoint accuracy. Beyond that, his cunning and bravery also led to the capture of 300 German soldiers. Yet, despite these incredible feats, despite the undeniable heroism, he was a man of profound humility. You realize that in all his actions, he never once bragged, never sought personal glory. His silence was a testament to his character, a quiet understanding of the gravity of his actions. When the war finally ended, and the ravaged world began its slow, painful process of healing, Francis Pegamagabo returned home. He returned a hero, undeniably, yet one who was largely ignored. His contributions often overlooked by a society that struggled to acknowledge the sacrifices of its indigenous peoples. But his fight did not end with the cessation of hostilities overseas. He embarked on a different, quieter war, a lifelong struggle for the rights and recognition of his people, advocating tirelessly for justice and equality. His journey, you understand, was a testament to a spirit that refused to be broken, whether by the horrors of war or the injustices of peace. A quiet warrior who continued to fight for what was right, long after the last shots had faded into history. Now, let your awareness drift forward in time once more, shifting from the cold, muddy trenches of Europe to the stifling, emerald embrace of the Vietnamese jungle. Here, you will encounter a Marine whose legend was whispered like a humid breeze through the dense foliage, a name that would become synonymous with deadly precision: Carlos Hathcock. You might imagine him as a young boy, growing up far from the battlefields, perhaps in a quiet American town, his imagination ignited by the relics of his father's past wars. He wasn't just playing soldier, he was learning, observing, internalizing the essence of a warrior's spirit, even before he knew his true calling. When he arrived in Vietnam, the jungle became his crucible, shaping him into an almost mythical figure. The sheer oppressive heat, the suffocating humidity, the constant threat of unseen dangers, all contributed to a landscape of intense psychological and physical pressure. Amidst this chaos, he earned his iconic moniker, White Feather. You might envision him pinning a stark white feather to his hat, a defiant and audacious challenge to his adversaries, a bold declaration of his presence in a place where invisibility was paramount. This feather was not a symbol of fear, but of an almost chilling confidence, an invitation to a deadly game he was destined to win. Carlos Hathcock was credited with 93 confirmed kills, a number that alone secures his place in history. Yet, it is widely believed that the true count, the unrecorded shadows in the jungle, may have stretched closer to 300. Each shot was a whisper of death, absorbed by the hungry jungle, leaving little trace but the cold finality of its impact. His effectiveness, his almost supernatural ability to strike from the unseen, soon made him a priority target for the enemy. A substantial bounty was placed on his head, a desperate attempt to neutralize this phantom threat. But, as you will discover, no one who sought to claim that bounty lived to tell the tale. The jungle, you understand, belonged to the White Feather. One of his most legendary feats, one that borders on the incredible, involves a duel with an enemy sniper. You might picture the intense psychological battle. Two unseen hunters stalking each other through the tangled vegetation, each seeking the slightest advantage. Hathcock, with his extraordinary perception and unwavering nerve, achieved what many considered impossible. He located his adversary, not by sight, but by anticipating the exact trajectory of a bullet. He fired his own shot, not at the sniper's body, but with such precision that his bullet traveled through the enemy's own scope, striking him directly in the eye. Imagine the sheer mastery, the calculated risk, the unflinching focus required for such a shot. A testament to a level of skill that bordered on the sublime. In the oppressive, humid heat of the Vietnamese jungle, death often arrived without a scream, without a grand, dramatic flourish. Instead, it came with the soft, almost imperceptible sigh of a distant rifle, a quiet punctuation mark in the endless, buzzing symphony of the jungle. You linger in the humid embrace of the Vietnamese jungle, imagining the air thick with tension, the ever-present hum of unseen insects, and the distant, unsettling sounds of conflict. It is here, in a moment of unimaginable terror, that Carlos Hathcock's quiet heroism was forged anew, revealing a depth of character far beyond his legendary marksmanship. An anti-tank mine, a brutal, indiscriminate force of destruction, detonated, engulfing his entire unit in a sudden, hellish inferno. You can almost feel the searing heat, hear the terrifying roar of the flames, smell the acrid scent of burning fuel and flesh. Chaos erupted, bodies flailing, the screams of the wounded echoing through the jungle. In that horrifying instant, as flames danced a deadly ballet around him, Hathcock did not hesitate. Despite being severely burned himself, his skin blistering and tearing from the intense heat, he repeatedly plunged into the fiery wreckage. You might picture him, fueled by an almost superhuman resolve, pulling 7 fellow Marines from the consuming flames, one by one, dragging them to safety, risking his own life again and again. It was a testament to a loyalty and courage that transcended self-preservation. Finally, his own body, pushed beyond its limits, collapsed, his skin burning, his lungs searing, the profound pain finally overwhelming his conscious will. Carlos Hathcock survived that ordeal, but his life would forever be marked by its fiery embrace. He lived with constant, excruciating pain, a relentless reminder of the inferno he had endured. Yet, even in his suffering, his spirit remained unbroken, his quiet dedication unwavering. He never stopped teaching. You might envision him, a man scarred but resolute, patiently guiding new recruits, imparting the invaluable lessons he had learned in the crucible of combat. He taught them to breathe, not just to fill their lungs, but to control their very life force, to steady their aim, to cultivate that profound, almost meditative stillness that precedes the perfect shot. And, crucially, he taught them to wait, to embrace the virtue of patience, to let the world fall away until only the target and the self remained. A good sniper, he would often say, his voice calm, measured, doesn't need hate, just patience. You can almost hear the wisdom in those words, understanding that his work was not driven by malice or vengeance, but by a cold, precise discipline, a professional detachment. It was about executing a task, about protecting his comrades, about the ultimate patience of waiting for the opportune moment. Years later, long after the jungles of Vietnam had faded into memory, disease began to take its toll on his body, slowly, inexorably wearing him down. Yet, even as his physical form weakened. His calm, his inner stillness, that unwavering serenity he had cultivated in the face of death, never abandoned him. He passed away in 1999, his life ending much as his shots had often begun quietly. You can almost feel the gentle fading of a final shot, an echo of his presence, dissolving softly into the wind, leaving behind a legacy of quiet strength, unparalleled skill, and an enduring lesson in patience and resilience. You now arrive at a crucial point of reflection, drawing together the disparate threads of these extraordinary lives. Across the vast expanse of different wars, different landscapes, and different eras, Simo Häyhä, Lyudmila Pavlichenko, Francis Pegamagabo, and Carlos Hathcock all arrived at the same profound understanding, mastered the same enigmatic art, the art of silence. This wasn't merely an absence of sound, you realize, but a deeper, more intentional silence. It was not the silence born of fear, a cowering hush, but the profound, almost sacred quietude of absolute focus. Imagine yourself in their position, honing your senses to an almost unbearable acuity. Every heartbeat you might feel was measured not in seconds, but in the precise distance to a distant target. A silent calculation unfolding within your very core. Every breath you took became a deliberate act, a countdown, a rhythmic preparation for the singular moment of truth. This discipline demanded an almost total communion of mind and body, where the external world faded into an indistinct blur, and only the essential elements remained. The scope, that cold, unforgiving lens, did more than just magnify distant targets. You might feel, looking through it with their eyes, that it also magnified something far more intimate, far more unsettling. It magnified guilt. It brought the human cost of their actions into stark, uncompromising focus, stripping away the anonymity of distance, forcing a confrontation with the profound consequences of their chosen path. To execute their duty, to make that final, decisive shot, they had to cultivate an extraordinary detachment. They had to learn to stop feeling, to build mental walls, to compartmentalize the very essence of human empathy, pushing it aside to maintain the necessary, chilling clarity. Yet, you understand, deeply, that no one truly forgets forever. The memories, the echoes, the quiet burden of those actions would inevitably linger, seeping into the quiet corners of their souls. This mastery of stillness, this profound ability to command both external quiet and internal calm, was their defining characteristic. It was a state of being where time seemed to slow, where the world held its collective breath. You might even imagine, in that ultimate silence, that even the gods themselves paused, holding their breath, observing the precise, chilling ballet of a human being pushed to the absolute limits of focus and control. It is in this profound stillness that the true, multifaceted nature of their lives, their sacrifices, and their indelible legacy truly begins to resonate within you. As you gently drift towards the conclusion of our journey, you are left with a quiet, lingering question. An image burned into your mind's eye. What do you truly see when you look through a sniper's scope? You realize, with a profound sense of understanding, that you gaze upon not one, but two distinct faces. There is, of course, the face of the enemy, the distant, often indistinct figure that represents the opposition, the threat. But then, in the stark, unforgiving clarity of the lens, you also see yourself. You see your own reflection, however faint, however blurred, a constant, silent reminder of the profound humanity that exists on both sides of that deadly divide. These individuals, these masters of stillness and precision, were not, in the conventional sense, heroes. That word, with its connotations of glory and triumph, often fails to capture the intricate, often tragic, reality of their existence. Instead, you understand, they stand as stark, unyielding reminders of what war truly demands from its participants, the immense sacrifices it exacts, the depths of human endurance it tests, and the quiet, often unseen burdens it places upon the soul. They lived lives defined by an almost unimaginable paradox. They existed in the shadows, taking lives, so that others could continue to move, could continue to live. Their silent actions were often the very mechanism through which the overwhelming silence of battle could ultimately be broken by one more breath, one more chance for survival, one more flicker of hope for peace. War is hell, they said. These individuals who knew its most intimate, chilling secrets. And you, having journeyed through their stories, having witnessed their quiet struggles and their profound understanding of conflict, now realize that they would indeed know. They experienced its raw, brutal truth not from the distant perspective of a command tent, but from the frigid earth, the humid jungle floor, the lonely perch of a ruined building. Their rifles, once instruments of deadly precision, now stand silent. Their individual battles have concluded. Their personal wars have found their quiet peace, but their echoes remain. You can almost feel them, like faint ripples on a still pond, woven into the fabric of history, whispering through the quiet moments of the present. Somewhere, in the profound, comforting stillness of the night, as you settle deeper into your own tranquility, you can still hear it, the faint, almost imperceptible rhythm of their existence, the enduring legacy of their discipline, their sacrifice, their unwavering focus, a soft, steady cadence that transcends time, a timeless whisper carried on the wind, echoing across the vast, silent landscapes of memory. One breath, one shot,